Sloane's heart leapt to his throat, and its beating choked his utterances of rapture and amaze and dread. But rapture dominated the other emotions. He could scarcely control the impulse to run to meet Lucy without a single cautious thought. He put the precious letter inside his blouse, where it seemed to warm his breast. He buckled on his gun-belt, and extinguishing the light, he hurried out. A crescent moon had just tipped the bluff. The village lanes and cabins and trees lay silver in the moonlight. A lonesome coyote barked in the distance. All else was still. The air was cool, sweet, fragrant. There appeared to be a glamour of light, of silence, of beauty over the desert. Sloane kept under the dark lee of the bluff and worked around so that he could be above the village, where there was little danger of meeting anyone. Yet presently he had to go out of the shadow into the moon-blanched lane. Swift and silent as an Indian he went along, keeping in the shade of what trees there were, until he came to the grove of cottonwoods. The grove was a black mystery lanced by silver rays. He slipped in among the trees, halting every few steps to listen. The action, the realization, had helped him to make him cool, to steel him, though never before in his life had he been so exalted. The pursuit and capture of Wildfire, at one time the desire of his heart, were as nothing to this. Love had called him, and life, and he knew death, hung in the balance. If Bostil found him seeking Lucy, there would be blood spilled. Sloane quaked at the thought, for the cold and ghastly oppression following the death he had meted out to Sears came to him at times. But such thoughts were fleeting. Only one thought really held his mind, and the one was that Lucy loved him, had sent strange, wild, passionate words to him. He found the narrow path, its white crossed by slowly moving black bars of shadow, and stealthily he followed this, keen of eye and ear, stopping at every rustle. He well knew the bench Lucy had mentioned. It was in a remote corner of the grove, under the big trees near the spring. Once Sloane thought he caught a glimpse of white. Perhaps it was only moonlight. He slipped on, and when beyond the branching paths that led toward the house he breathed freer. The grove appeared deserted. At last he crossed the runway from the spring, smelled the cool, wet moss and watercress, and saw the big cottonwood looming dark above the other trees. A patch of moonlight brightened a little glade just at the edge of the dense shade cast by the cottonwood. Here the bench stood. It was empty. Sloane's rapture vanished. He was suddenly chilled. She was not there. She might have been intercepted. He would not see her. The disappointment, the sudden relaxation was horrible. Then a white, slender shape flashed from beside the black tree trunk and flew toward him. It was noiseless, like a spectre, and swift as the wind. Was he dreaming? He felt so strange. Then the white shape reached him, and he knew. Lucy leapt into his arms. "Len! Len! Oh, I'm so glad to see you!" she whispered. She seemed breathless, keen, new to him, not in the least afraid nor shy. Sloane could only hold her. He could not have spoken even if she had given him a chance. "I know everything, what they accuse you of, how the riders treated you, how my dad struck you. Oh, he's a brute. I hate him for that. Why didn't you keep out of his way? Van saw it all. Oh, I hate him too. He said you lay still where you fell. Oh, dear Lynn, that blow may have hurt you dreadfully. Shame to you because you couldn't strike back at my dad. But it reached me too. It hurt me. It woke my heart. Oh, where did he hit you? Oh, I've seen him hit men, his terrible fists." "Lucy, never mind," whispered Sloane. "I'd stood to be shot just for this." He let her hand softly on his face, feeling around tenderly till they found the swollen bruise on mouth and chin. "Oh, he struck you. And I'll kiss you," she whispered. "If kisses will make it well, it'll be well." She seemed strange, wild, passionate in her tenderness. She lifted her face and kissed him softly again and again and again, till the touch that had been exquisitely painful to his bruised lips became rapture. Then she leaned back in his arms, her hands on his shoulders, white-faced, dark-eyed, and laughed up in his face, lovingly, daringly, as if she defied the world to change what she had done. "Lucy, Lucy, he can beat me again," said Sloane low and hoarsely. "If you love me, you'll keep out of his way," replied the girl. "If I love you? My God, I've felt my heart die 1,000 times since that morning when you—" "Lynn, I didn't know," she interrupted with sweet, grave earnestness. "I know now." And Sloane could not but know too, looking at her, and the sweetness, the eloquence, the noble abandon of her avowal sounded to the depths of him. His dread, his resignation, his shame, all sped forever in the deep, full breath of relief with which he cast off that burden. He tasted the nectar of happiness the first time in his life. He lifted his head, never, he knew, to lower it again. He would be true to what she had made him. "Come in the shade," he whispered, and with his arm round her he led her to the great tree-trunk. "Is it safe for you here? And how long can you stay?" "I had it out with Dad. Left him licked once in his life," she replied. "Then I went to my room and fastened the door and slipped out my window. I can stay as long as I want. No one will know." Sloane's heart throbbed. She was his. The clasp of her hands on his, the gleam of her eyes, the white, daring flash of her face in the shadow of the moon, these told him she was his. How it had come about was beyond him, but he realized the truth. What a girl! This was the same nerve which she had showed when she had run Wildfire out in front of the fleetest horses in the uplands. "Tell me, then," he began quietly, with keen eyes roving under the trees and eyes strained tight. "Tell me what's come off." "Don't you know?" she queried in amaze. "Only that for some reason I'm done in Bostil's Ford. It can't just be because I punched Joel Creech. I felt it before I met Bostil at the store. He taunted me. We had bitter words. He told before all of them how the outfit I wore you gave me. And then I dared him to race the king, my horse and my life against you." "Yes, I know," she whispered softly. "'Twas all over town. Oh, Lynn, it was a grand bet, and Bostil 4 flushed, as the riders say. For days a race between Wildfire and the king has been in the air. There'll never be peace in Bostil's Ford again till that race is run." "But, Lucy, could Bostil's wanting Wildfire and hating me because I won't sail, could that ruin me here at the Ford?" "It could. Oh, but Lynn, there's more. Oh, I hate to tell you," she whispered passionately. "I thought you'd know. Joel Creech swore you cut the ropes on the ferry boat and sent it adrift." "The loon!" ejaculated Sloane, and he laughed low in both anger and ridicule. "Lucy, that's only fool's talk." "He's crazy. Oh, if I ever get him in front of me again when I'm on Sarch, I'll... She ended with a little gasp and leaned a moment against Sloane. He felt her heartbeat, felt the strong clasp of her hands. She was indeed Bostil's flesh and blood, and there was more than in her dangerous to arouse. "Lynn, the folks here are queer," she resumed more calmly. "For years Dad has ruled them. They see with his eyes and talk with his voice. Joel Creech swore you cut those cables, swore he trailed you. Bracton believed him. Van believed him. They told my father, and he... Oh, my Dad, God forgive him, he jumped at that. The village as one person now believes you sent the boat adrift, so Creech's horses could not cross and you would win the race." "Lucy! If it wasn't so funny, I'd be mad as—" burst out Sloane. "It isn't funny, it's terrible. I know who cut those cables. Holly knows. Dad knows, and, oh, Lynn, I hate my own father." "My God!" gasped Sloane, as the full signification burst upon him. Then his next thought was for Lucy. "Listen, dear, you mustn't say that," he entreated. "He's your father. He's a good man every way except when he's after horses. Then he's half horse. I understand him. I feel sorry for him. And if he's throwed the blame on me, all right, I'll stand it. What do I care? I was queered anyhow because I wouldn't part with my horse. Can't matter so much if people think I did that just to help win a race. But if they knew your father did it, and if Creech's horses starve, why, it'd be a disgrace for him. And you."
"Lynn Sloane, you'll accept the blame?"
she whispered, with wide dark eyes on him, hands on his shoulders. "Sure I will," replied Sloane. "I can't be any worse off."
"You're better than any of them, my rider,"
she cried, full-voiced and tremulous.
"Len, you make me love you so it hurts."
And she seemed about to fling herself into his arms again. There was a strangeness about her, a glory.
"But you'll not take the shame of that act, for I won't let you. I'll tell my father I was with you when the boat was cut loose. He'll believe me."
"Yes, and he'll kill me," groaned Sloane. "Good Lord, Lucy, don't do that."
"I will, and he'll not kill you. Lynn, Dad took a great fancy to you. I know that. He thinks he hates you, but in his heart he doesn't. If he got hold of Wildfire, why, he'd never be able to do enough for you. He never could make it up. What do you think? I told him you hugged and kissed me shamefully that day."
"Oh, Lucy, you didn't," implored Sloane.
"I sure did. And what do you think? He said he once did the same to my mother. No, Lynn, Dad'd never kill you for anything except a fury about horses. All the fights he ever had were over horse deals. The two men he...
Lucy faltered, and her shudder was illuminating to Sloane.
"Both of them. Fights over horse trades."
"Lucy, if I'm ever unlucky enough to meet Bostil again, I'll be deaf and dumb. And now you promise me you won't tell him you were with me that night."
"Lynn, if the occasion comes, I will. I couldn't help it,"
replied Lucy. "Then fight shy of the occasion," he rejoined earnestly, "or that would be the end of Lynn Sloane."
Then what on earth can we do?"
Lucy said with sudden break of spirit. "I think we must wait. You wrote in your letter you'd stick to me, you'd—" He could not get the words out, the thought so overcame him.
"If it comes to a finish, I'll go with you,"
Lucy returned, with passion rising again. "Oh, to ride off with you, Lucy. To have you all to myself, I daren't think of it. But that's only selfish."
"Maybe it's not so selfish as you believe. If you left the ford, now, it'd break my heart. I'd never get over it."
"Lucy, you love me? That well?" Then their lips met again and their hands locked, and they stood silent, straining toward each other. He held the slight form, so pliant, so responsive, so alive, close to him, and her face lay hidden on his breast, and he looked out over her head into the quivering moonlit shadows. The night was as still as one away on the desert far from the abode of men. It was more beautiful than any dream of a night in which he had wandered far, into strange lands where wild horses were and forests lay black under moon-silvered peaks. "We'll run, then, if it comes to a finish," said Sloane huskily. "But I'll wait. I'll stick it out here. I'll take what comes, so maybe I'll not disgrace you more."
"I told Van I gloried in being hugged by you that day," she replied, and her little defiant laugh told what she thought of the alleged disgrace.
"You torment him," remonstrated Sloane. "You set him against us. It would be better to keep still."
"But my blood is up,"
she said, and she pounded his shoulder with her fist.
I'll fight! I'll fight! I couldn't avoid Van. It was Holly who told me Van was threatening you, and when I met Van he told me how everybody said you insulted me, had been worse than a drunken rider, and that he'd beat you half to death. So I told Van Joel Creech might have seen us. I didn't doubt that, but he didn't see that I liked being hugged.
What did Van say then? Asked Sloane, all aglow with his wonderful joy.
He wilted. He slunk away. And so I'll tell them all.
Oh, but Lucy, you've always been so truthful.
What do you mean?
Well, to say you liked being hugged that day was a story, wasn't it?
That was what made me so furious, she admitted shyly. I was surprised when you grabbed me off Wildfire, and my heart beat so when you hugged me, and when you kissed me, I was petrified. I knew I liked it then, and I was furious with myself.
Sloane drew a long, deep breath of utter enchantment. You'll take back Wildfire?
Oh, Lynn, don't ask me, she implored.
Take him back, and me with him.
Then I will, but no one must know that yet.
They drew apart then. Now you must go, said Sloane reluctantly. Listen, I forgot to warn you about Joel Creech. Don't ever let him near you. He's crazy and he means evil.
Oh, I know, Lynn. I'll watch, but I'm not afraid of him.
He's strong, Lucy. I saw him lift bags that were hefty for me. Lucy, do you ride these days?
Every day. If I couldn't ride, I couldn't live.
Well, I'm afraid, said Sloane nervously. There's Creech and Courts. Both have threatened you.
I'm afraid of Courts, replied Lucy with a shiver. You should have seen him look at me race day. It made me hot with anger, yet weak too, somehow. But Dad says I'm never in any danger if I watch out. And I do. Who could catch me on Sarge?
Any horse can be tripped in the sage. You told me how Joel tried to rope Sage King. Did you ever tell your dad that?
I forgot, but then I'm glad I didn't. Dad would shoot for that, quicker than if Joel tried to rope him. Don't worry, Lynn. I always pack a gun.
But can you use it?
Lucy laughed. Do you think I can only ride?
Sloane remembered that Holly had said he had taught Lucy how to shoot as well as ride. You'll be watchful, careful, he said earnestly.
Oh, Lynn, you need to be more than I. What will you do?
I'll stay up at the little cabin I thought I owned till today.
Didn't you buy it? Asked Lucy quickly.
I thought I did, but never mind. Maybe I won't get put out just yet. And when will I see you again?
Here, every night. Wait till I come, she replied. Good night, Lynn.
I'll wait, he exclaimed with a catch in his voice. Oh, my luck, I'll wait, Lucy, every day, hoping and praying that this trouble will lighten, and I'll wait at night for you. He kissed her good-bye and watched the slight form glide away, flit to and fro, white in the dark patches, grow indistinct and vanish. He was left alone in the silent grove. Sloane stole back to the cabin and lay sleepless and tranced, watching the stars till late that night. All the next day he did scarcely anything but watch and look after his horses, and watch and drag the hours out and dream despite his dread. But no one visited him. The cabin was left to him that day. It had been a hot day, with great thunderhead, black and creamy white clouds rolling down from the canyon country. No rain had fallen on the ford. The storms nearby had cooled the air. At sunset Sloane saw a rainbow bending down, ruddy and gold, connecting the purple of cloud with the purple of the horizon. Out beyond the valley the clouds were broken, showing rifts of blue, and they rolled low, burying the heads of the monuments, creating a wild and strange spectacle. Twilight followed, and appeared to rise to meet the darkening clouds, and at last the gold on the shafts faded, the monuments faded, and the valley grew dark. Sloane took advantage of the hour before moonrise to steal down into the grove, there to wait for Lucy. She came so quickly he scarcely felt he waited at all, and then the time spent with her, sweet, fleeting, precious, left him stronger to wait for her again, to hold himself in, to cease his brooding, to learn faith in something deeper than he could fathom. The next day he tried to work, but found idle waiting made the time fly swifter, because in it he could dream. In the dark of the rustling cottonwoods he met Lucy, as eager to see him as he was to see her, tender, loving, remorseful, 100 sweet and bewildering things all so new, so unbelievable to Sloane. That night he learned that Bostil had started for Durango with some of his riders. This trip surprised Sloane and relieved him likewise, for Durango was over 200 miles distant, and a journey there even for the hard riders was a matter of days.
"He left no orders for me," Lucy said, "except to behave myself. Is this behaving?"
she whispered and nestled close to Sloane, audacious, tormenting as she had been before this dark cloud of trouble.
"But he left orders for Holly to ride with me and look after me. Isn't that funny? Poor old Holly. He hates to double-cross Dad, he says."
"I'm glad Holly's to look after you," replied Sloane. "Yesterday I saw you tearing down into the sage on Sarch. I wondered what you'd do, Lucy, if Courts or that loon Creech should get a hold of you."
"I'd fight."
"Oh, but child, that's nonsense. You couldn't fight either of 'em."
"Couldn't I? Well, I just could. I'd shoot Courts, and then I'd whip Joel Creech with my quirt. And if he kept after me, I'd let Sarch run him down. Sarch hates him."
"You're a brave sweetheart," mused Sloane. "Suppose you were caught and couldn't get away. Would you leave a trail somehow?"
"I sure would."
"Lucy, I'm a wild horse hunter," he went on, thoughtfully, as if speaking to himself. "I never failed on a trail. I could track you over bare rock."
"Then I'll leave a trail, so never fear," she replied. "But don't borrow trouble. You're always afraid for me. Look at the bright side. Dad seems to have forgotten you. Maybe it all wasn't so bad as we thought. Though I hope so. How was my horse, Wildfire? Oh, I want to ride him again. I can hardly keep from going after him."
And so they whispered while the moments swiftly passed. It was early during the afternoon of the next day that Sloane, hearing the clip-clop of unshod ponies, went outside to look. On part of the lane he could see clearly, and into it stalked Joel Creech, leading the leanest and gauntest pony Sloane had ever seen. A man as lean and gaunt as the ponies stalked behind. The sight shocked Sloane. Joel Creech and his father. Sloane had no proof because he had never seen the elder Creech, yet strangely he felt convinced of it, and grim ideas began to flash into his mind. Creech would hear who was accused of cutting the boat adrift. What would he say? If he believed as all the villagers believed, then Bostil's Ford would become an unhealthy place for Lynn Sloane. Where were the great racehorses, Blue Roan and Peg and the other thoroughbreds? A pang shot through Sloane. "Oh, not lost, not starved," he muttered. "Oh, that would be hell." Yet he believed just this had happened. How strange he had never considered such an event as the return of Creech. "I'd better look him up before he looks me," said Sloane. It took but an instant to strap on his belt and gun. Then Sloane strode down his path, out into the lane toward Bracton's. Whatever before boded ill to Sloane had been nothing to what menaced him now. He would have a man to face, a man whom repute called just but stern. Before Sloane reached the vicinity of the store, he saw riders come out to meet the Creech party. It so happened there were more riders than usually frequented Bracton's at that hour. The old storekeeper came stumbling out and raised his hands. The riders could be heard loud-voiced and excited. Sloane drew nearer, and the nearer he got, the swifter he strode. Instinct told him that he was making the right move. He would face this man whom he was accused of ruining. The poor mustangs hung their heads dejectedly. "Bag of bones," some rider loudly said. And then Sloane drew close to the excited group. Bracton held center. He was gesticulating. His thin voice rose piercingly. "Creech, whar's Peg and the roan? God almighty, man! You ain't sayin' them cayuses there are all you've got left of that grand bunch of hosses?" There was scarcely a sound. All the riders were still. Sloane fastened his eyes on Creech. He saw a gaunt, haggard face almost black with dust, worn and sad, with big eyes of terrible gloom. He saw an unkempt, ragged form that had been wet and muddy, and was now dust-caked. Creech stood silent in a dignity of despair that wrung Sloane's heart. His silence was an answer. It was Joel Creech who broke the suspense. "Didn't I tell you all what had happened?" he shrilled. "Parched and starved!" "Oh, no!" chorused the riders. Bracton took over. Tears dimmed his eyes, tears that he had no shame for. "So help me God, I'm sorry," was his broken exclamation. Sloane had forgotten himself in possible revelation concerning him, but when Holly appeared close to him with a significant warning look, Sloane grew keen once more on his own account. He felt a hot flame inside him, a deep and burning anger at the man who might have saved Creech's horses, and he, like Bracton, felt sorrow for Creech, and a rider's sense of loss, of pain. These horses, these dumb brutes, faithful and sometimes devoted, had to suffer an agonizing death because of the selfishness of men. "I reckon we'd all like to hear what come off, Creech, if you don't feel too bad to tell us," said Bracton. "Give me a drink," replied Creech. "Well, damn my old head," exclaimed Bracton. "I'm getting old. Come on in, all of you. We're glad to see Creech home." The riders filed in after Bracton and the Creeches. Holly stayed close beside Sloane, both of them in the background. "I heard the flood coming that night," said Creech to his silent and tense-faced listeners. "I heard it miles up the canyon. 'Peared a bigger roar than any flood before. As it happened, I was alone and it took time to get the hosses up. If there'd been an Indian with me, or even Joel, maybe—" His voice quivered slightly, broke, and then he resumed. "Even when I got the hosses over to the landing, it wasn't too late. If only someone had heard me and come down. I was yelling and shot. Nobody heard. The river was rising fast, and that roar had begun to make my hair raise. It seemed like years the time I waited there. Then the flood came down, black and windy and awful. I had hell getting the hosses back. And the next morning 2 Paiutes came down. They had lost mustangs up on the rocks. All the feed on my place was gone. There wasn't nothing to do but try to get out. The Paiutes said there was no chance north, no water, no grass, and so I decided to go south, if we could climb over that last slide. Peg broke her leg there, and I had to shoot her. But we climbed out with the rest of the bunch. I left it then to the Paiutes. We traveled 5 days west to head the canyons. No grass and only a little water, salted that. Blue Roan was game if I ever seen a game hoss. Then the Paiutes took to working in and out and around, not to get out, but to find a little grazing. I never knowed the earth was so barren. One by one them hosses went down, and at last I couldn't see Blue Roan starving, dying right before my eyes, and I shot him too. And what hurts me most now is that I didn't have the nerve to kill him, first off."
There was a long pause in Creech's narrative.
"Them pirates will get paid if ever I can pay 'em. I parched myself but for them. We circled and crossed them red cliffs and then the strip of red sand and worked down to the canyon. Under the wall was a long stretch of beach. Sandy, and at the head of this we found Bostil's boat." "Well, damn!" burst out the profane Bracton. "Bostil's boat? Say, ain't Joel told you yet about the boat?" "No, Joel ain't said word about the boat," replied Creech. "What about it?" "It was cut loose just before the flood."
Manifestly, Bracton expected this to be staggering to Creech, but he did not even show surprise.
"There's a rider here named Sloane, a wild horse wrangler," went on Bracton, "and Joel swears this Sloane cut the boat loose so's he'd have a better chance to win the race. Joel swears he tracked this fellow Sloane."
For Sloane, the moment was fraught with many emotions, but not one of them was fear. He did not need the sudden force of Holly's strong hand pushing him forward. Sloane broke into the group and faced Creech.
"It's not true. I never cut that boat loose," he declared ringingly. "Who are you?" queried Creech. "My name's Sloane. I rode in here with a wild horse and he won a race. Then I was blamed for this trick."
Creech's steady, gloomy eyes seemed to pierce Sloane through. They were terrible to look into, yet they held no menace for him.
"And Joel accused you?"
"So they say.
I fought with him, struck him for an insult to a girl." "Come round here, Joel," said Creech sternly.
His big, scaly black hand closed on the boy's shoulder. Joel cringed under it.
"Son, you've lied. What for?"
Joel showed abject fear of his father.
"He's got on Lucy, and I seen him with her," muttered the boy. "And you lied to hurt Sloane?"
Joel would not reply to this in speech, though that was scarcely needed to show he had lied. He seemed to have no sense of guilt. Creech eyed him pityingly and then pushed him back.
"Men, my son has done this rider dirt," said Creech. "You all see that? Sloane never cut the boat loose. And say, you all seem to think cutting that boat loose was the crime. No, that wasn't the crime. The crime was keeping the boat out of the water for days when my horses could have been crossed."
Sloane stepped back, forgotten, it seemed to him. Both joy and sorrow swayed him. He had been exonerated. But this hard, gloomy Creech, he knew things. And Sloane thought of Lucy.
"Who did cut that thar boat loose?"
demanded Bracton incredulously. Creech gave him a strange glance.
"As I was saying, we came on the boat fast at the head of the long stretch. I seen the cables had been cut, and I seen more than that. Well, the river was high and swift, but this was a long stretch with good landing way below on the other side. We got the boat in, and by rowing hard and drifting we got across, leading the horses. We had 5 when we took to the river. 2 went down on the way over. We climbed out then. The Piutes went to find some Navajos and get horses, and I headed for the ford, made camp twice, and Joel seen me coming out a ways." "Creech, was there anything left in that boat?"
began Bracton with intense but pondering curiosity.
"Anything on the ropes or so that might give an idea to who cut her loose?"
Creech made no reply to that. The gloom burned darker in his eyes. He seemed a man with a secret. He trusted no one here. These men were all friends of his, but friends under strange conditions. His silence was tragic, but all about the man breathed vengeance.